I live in Thailand, but not as an English teacher or NGO worker or anything like that. I'm a local. I live here. So, if you're expecting some ladyboy joke from the title, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But I feel like I should let you know about what I've encountered last weekend. I know people don't generally believe in supernatural things, but I believe this place is different. People come here to listen to extraordinary accounts because it's all true, right? So please, listen to my story. This knowledge might just save your life the next time you visit Thailand. I lurk on here because it entertains me to read about other parts of the world. I'm just an office worker, living in the capital city of Bangkok, wearing a tie, working on Excel, always being scolded by my American boss. But my home is in the rural countryside. Lots of green paddy fields and sugar palms off in the distance, with a backdrop of grey hills. It is the soothing side of my childhood. I was raised there by my parents who were rice farmers. I used to bring their buffaloes to graze in the fields, just so I could doze all day on its sturdy back. It is the place of my nostalgia. As an office worker, I try to visit my parents as often as I can, because they're old now, much too old for farm work. But still, they wouldn't lay their hands. Imagine if you're 60 and you have to hunch over the field under a scorching sun to plant the rice stalks all day from dawn till dusk. Anyway, I visit just so I can bring some joy to their hearts and hand them a little souvenir from the city. Usually it's a bit of money I can spare, after paying my rent of course. But when I'm running short, I would buy them some American sweets or cookies, ones that I'm sure they've never tasted before. Sorry for the diversion. Okay, back on topic. So, it is the past weekend that things become strange and, well, downright terrifying. I could barely believe it if it hadn't happened to myself. If my uncle or auntie from the village told me that they'd seen what I'd seen, I would just nod politely and secretly deride them for their superstition. But now that this happened to me, personally, well, I don't quite know what to believe. Last Saturday, I planned to visit my parents early in the morning, but my boss told me that he needs me to have his PowerPoint done by 3 p.m. Just perfect. It would take me 5 hours to travel from Bangkok to my hometown by train, and the last one leaves at 2 p.m. So I went into the office and worked like I never did before. I skipped lunch, and I churned out that PowerPoint and immediately rushed to the train station. I barely made it in time to board the last train. However, that means that I'm going to have to walk to my parents' house when it's dark. That makes me nervous. It is known that no one should walk around after dark in my village. Now, before you criticize me, I am not a superstitious man. I'm a city dweller, an office worker, and a man of science. I'm more scared of physical threats like being mugged or murdered, even if it's unlikely to happen in the lonely, quiet track to my parents' house. No, The nervousness, it comes from my upbringing. In my village, and many others in Thailand, we believe in folk tales and ghosts. Instead of a doctor, my parents would bring me to a shaman whenever I'm ill. When I was suffering from dengue fever at the 13th year of my life, the old crone had crouched over me with her teeth stained black from betel nuts, breathing over me with a sickly, sweet stench. She then declared that I was plagued by a malevolent ghost who would soon kill me if it wasn't appeased. My parents immediately cooked up a feast, and they brought the offerings to pray before the local banyan tree, lighting candles and asking monks to perform a prayer service. They said that cured me and was the reason I'm alive today. Of course, I don't believe them now. I know that dengue fever is caused by a virus transmitted by mosquitoes. But still, once you've been raised in that kind of belief, it's very hard to shake it off. All throughout that slow, trudging train journey, then the bus journey on the winding road through the darkening countryside, I couldn't find a comfortable seat. I kept on fidgeting, shifting around, and checking my phone over and over. I told my parents that I would arrive late, and they told me that it might be better if I moved my visit to the next weekend. I then told them that I'm already on the train, and they told me that it's better if I spend the night at the train station. I grunted, and I did not reply. I was determined to make the journey that very night. I wanted to surprise them. I wanted to prove the village was wrong. I was determined to visit them and prove that village belief was outdated, to make a difference with my superior beliefs from the city. Looking back, I realize now that I was just using those excuses to calm my fears. Because when I got off that bus around 8 p.m. and saw the track leading through the paddy fields towards my parents' house in the darkness, all my reasons became flimsy and fragile. We had streetlights only on the main road, but nothing on the minor trails. I felt a childhood fear tugging at my heart. Why did I not listen to my parents, I thought. Without thinking, I picked up my phone to call them again. But there was no signal, not even a single bar. Usually, I would at least get 3G, even when I'm out here. I blame the signal failure. We get plenty of those. Cicadas were chirping, and insects began to gather around me, so I couldn't just stand out here to be a sitting blood bank. So, gripping the talisman around my neck, I went off the dark trail that I would normally be so familiar of, that would remind me of home. It didn't feel that way now. That was when I realized that I've never wandered out here before in my life. The 1 kilometer walk to the house had never seemed so long before, and I felt like a little boy once more. The trail was between 2 paddy fields, each locked in a low level of water to help rice grow. And the first 100 meters was easy enough, because the street lamp was illuminated that way. But beyond that, I had to use the torchlight from my phone to light the path in front of me. just in case there were snakes or scorpions. A whistling wind blew across the farm, and I shivered at the sound. I crept along the narrow trail until I saw the shadow of 3 sugar palms on my right, near the halfway point. I sighed, and I made a little smile, beginning to feel foolish for being so afraid. Just as I was easing my grip on my talisman, the world was plunged into darkness. The street lamps were all extinguished. Power cuts were common in rural Thailand, but my heart froze. Holding my breath in my chest, there was only my phone torch left in front of me, and the moon and stars that offered too little light for my city-dwelling eyes. I looked around wildly, throwing my torchlight everywhere, and an old prayer chant came naturally to my lips. And then I remembered that there should only be 2 sugar palms, not 3. I shone my light and found 2 trees. I heard a plop, a dripping sound in the paddy field behind me, and I spun around. I saw 2 long stalks of legs. I looked up, slowly, to see a pale, naked, emaciated body and arms as thin as chopsticks. I couldn't scream. My prayer stiffened on my lips, and I fell into the muddy paddy field, dropping my phone. This thing in front of me, it leaned down, long, spidery legs folding, and the face came into the beam of my phone's torchlight. Its eyes were pale, like the blind, wispy hair, and its horrible, horrible mouth had shrunken into a tiny round hole, smaller than my finger. It wheezed air through the hole in a shrill whistle, and it seemed to speak. When I couldn't reply, huddled in trembling silence, it whistled again, more shrilly, a tortured tone, and brought up 2 white hands as big as palm fronds. It made a Y gesture, putting hands together in a prayer that we Thai people are famous for. This sign, it meant greeting, thanking, or begging. I knew what it wanted. An old folklore was drilled deeper into me than the constructs of modern-day society. But I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even control my bladder or utter a prayer. Its expression changed, and the pale eyes grew bloodshot, and the whistling suddenly stopped. Out of the hole of its mouth, a long, red tongue rolled out and never seemed to end. Not until it was as long as my arm, and then even longer. Bile rose to my throat, and I wanted to vomit. But that physical bodily reaction woke me up from my paralysis, and finally, I screamed. I nodded furiously. I put my hands together to Y in return, and words came blurting out of my soul. I promised it a feast. I told it that it would never starve again. I swore that monks would bless its soul so it would suffer no longer. That tongue stopped extending, and finally retracted. Its hollow eyes met me for just a moment and finally stood up on those spindly legs and swayed off into the blackness, the plopping, fading away, and finally was gone. I stayed where I was, soaked among the rice stalks. I didn't know how long I stayed there, but when the street lamps finally came back, I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my phone, and sprinted to my parents' home. According to myth, what I had just seen was a lost soul. It would roam the spirit lands, forever hungry, because its mouth was too small to eat anything. So, on Sunday, I immediately went to the temple to pray to alleviate its suffering, and bought noodles as offerings, placing them before the 2 sugar palm trees near my parents' home. The noodles should fit in its tiny mouth. I'm back in Bangkok now, and I begin to wonder what would have happened if I didn't know of the ghost or couldn't remember the village's teachings. It would have killed me. There's no doubt. It would have opened my guts to drain my blood and sucked out my intestines. So here's my warning to you, travelers coming to Thailand. I know you like to travel to rural parts of Thailand for an exotic, cultural experience. But please remember that these are obscure areas cut off from the wider world. Whenever you happen to meet a ghost, pray for it and give it offerings. Be more open-minded and don't wear your rationality as a token of pride. There are many things that you don't understand in this world. Things beyond the scope of cold hard science. Don't be arrogant. Listen to villagers and respect their ways. Because superstition, it might save your life, like it has saved mine.